The decision of the Kings' leadership was so disappointing that Mike Brown had already driven to the airport to go to Los Angeles for an away game, but he received a call on the way that he was fired. The last game between the Kings and the Pistons was originally a game that the Kings could win. The Kings led by 19 points at one point, and still led by 13 points in the fourth quarter, but who could have thought that the Pistons would reverse and win in the end? This regrettable loss may have made the Kings owner Vivek Ranadive determined to fire Mike Brown. Either the Kings fouled when the Pistons received the ball and gave the opponent 2 free throws, or bet that the opponent could not make a three-pointer, but De'Aaron Fox made Jaden Ivey play and 1 three-pointer. It is really heartbreaking that the Kings lost in this way. The Kings' record this season is really confusing. Obviously, the net rating is positive 1.6, and the scoring ability is not bad, but they lose in key games. When Mike Brown was fired, the Kings had 13 wins and 18 losses in 31 games. They lost 13 key games, the most in the league, and had 3 wins and 10 losses in games with a difference of less than 5 points. The poor performance in this key game made the Kings' leadership restless, so Mike Brown became a scapegoat. Pay attention, this is a scene before Mike Brown was fired. An hour before being fired by the Kings' leadership, he led the team to complete a full training, and also communicated and talked with De'Aaron Fox and DeMar DeRozan and others. They were calm and talked and laughed with each other. Therefore, the rumors of internal conflicts and differences in the team were self-defeating. As for the reason why he was fired by the team, perhaps the answer can only be found from the team's record. In the summer of 2024, the Kings' deal for DeRozan is undoubtedly one of the biggest deals in the league during the entire offseason. Mike Brown also had 3 All-Star players, as well as Merlick Monk and Keegan Murray. Before the season started, many media even ranked their lineup strength in the top 3 in the West. But the result was far from expectations. After the start of the season, they suffered defeats one after another. After losing to the Lakers, Pacers, and Pistons, they suffered a 5-game losing streak at home. The Kings' leadership was questioned for this reason. Therefore, choosing to fire Mike Brown became the only explanation the Kings gave to outside fans. Let's review his coaching career with the Kings. If one person missed a free throw, the whole team would run back and forth. If one person made 2 free throws in a row, head coach Mike Brown would run back and forth. This was Mike Brown leading the players in training when he came to Kings 2 years ago. Mike Brown, who wears glasses and is fat, is always out of breath and completes every punishment seriously. He strictly requires the players to strengthen physical training. Since that day, he has slowly changed the internal atmosphere of the Sacramento Kings. In the past 2 years, his coaching winning percentage has been as high as 54.92%. Mike Brown became the first unanimous Coach of the Year recipient in NBA history in the 2022-2023 season. If you ask Mike Brown what is the most impressive thing, it is to lead the team to the playoffs again after 16 years. With so many honors, he cannot get rid of the industry rule that the coach should take the blame for the poor performance of the team. According to the Kings team reporter, when Mike Brown led the team to complete the training and set off for the away game in Los Angeles, he received a call from the Kings leadership and he was fired by the team. The reason they gave was perfunctory enough, and the Kings players did not want to play with Mike Brown. 24 hours before being fired, in the last 18.7 seconds against the Pistons, Jaden Ivey scored 2 points quickly to help the Pistons narrow the gap, and they were only 1 point behind the Kings at this time. At this time, Mike Brown requested a timeout, but when he walked between the players to explain something, everyone chose to ignore him and walked straight past Mike Brown. Mike Brown's embarrassed expression at this time showed that he had noticed the subtle atmosphere of the team. What was more straightforward was that in the 3-point decisive moment later, Mike Brown could only stand behind several assistant coaches. He shouted to remind the players that they could execute tactical fouls in advance, but the answer he got was that no one listened. The opponent successfully played and won three-pointer, and Kings suffered a 5-game losing streak. The convention of letting the coach take the blame for the poor team made everyone helpless to accept the decision of the Kings' leadership. But less than an hour after Mike Brown was fired, many famous coaches including Rick Carlisle and Mike Malone expressed their opinions one after another. They all thought Mike Brown was a responsible and good coach. He became the first unanimous Coach of the Year recipient in NBA history in the 2022-2023 season, and was fired this year. This seems to be Mike Brown's fate. In 2009, Mike Brown led LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers to the best record in history and was elected Coach of the Year, but was fired a year later. During his time with the Golden State Warriors, Mike Brown served as an assistant coach for 6 years. In addition to building an indestructible defensive system for the Warriors, he also won unanimous praise from all the players with his meticulous work attitude. Whenever the team trained and talked to Steve Kerr, he would take out a stack of paper and a pen from his shirt pocket to record the problems exposed by each player during training. He would pay attention to any details that could affect the players. In his first year with the Sacramento Kings, Coach Mike Brown often gathered the players together and asked, "Do you think we can make the playoffs this season?" For this team that has not made the playoffs in the past 16 years, and this group of young people, this goal was particularly unfamiliar to them. But just when they were hesitant to answer, Coach Mike Brown shouted loudly, "I firmly believe that we can make the playoffs this season, and even go further." After saying this, Coach Mike Brown began to name every player in the team. He carefully analyzed their respective characteristics and praised their highlights in the past few seasons. When it was De'Aaron Fox's turn, Coach Mike Brown commented, "You are one of the best players I have ever seen. Your performance is very good. Believe me, you are far from your ceiling." As a result, in the first season coached by Mike Brown, De'Aaron Fox's shooting percentage exceeded 50% for the first time in his career. His playing time became less, but his average points per game increased by 2 points. In addition to De'Aaron Fox's improvement, the Kings averaged 120.7 points per game in the regular season that season, ranking first in the league, with an offensive efficiency of 118.6, ranking first in the league, and a shooting percentage of 49.4%, ranking second in the league. My first 2 years in the league, I played on a team with zero culture. This is Tyrese Halliburton, who once played for the Kings, commenting on his former team. But last year, when he was interviewed again, he was surprised and lamented that he clearly felt that everyone on the Kings was different. In the 5 seasons before Mike Brown took over, the Sacramento Kings changed 4 head coaches. Since De'Aaron Fox joined the Sacramento Kings in 2017, he has played for 4 coaches and 3 general managers. In those seasons, De'Aaron Fox only won more than 31 games in one season. In other words, Mike Brown has done well enough. His firing from the Kings also caused quite a stir. Mike Malone, head coach of the Nuggets, said frankly that he was not surprised at Mike Brown's dismissal. After all, he had been dismissed by the owner of the Sacramento Kings. He said that the Sacramento Kings' approach was no class, no balls. Steve Kerr was also shocked. He was just named Coach of the Year a year and a half ago, but now he has suffered such a change. It is really sad. The NBA is a cruel business league. Since Greg Popovich became the head coach of the San Antonio Spurs in 1996, the league has had 300 head coach changes, and there have been 9 this season alone. When a team struggles and loses its way to victory, the head coach often becomes a scapegoat. However, high risk also means high return. Faced with high salaries, it is estimated that many head coaches will not mind taking the blame for the team. And situations like this have actually become the norm in the league. From Rick Carlisle, to Tyronn Lue, to Frank Vogel and Mike Budenholzer later, even championship coaches like them have not been spared, let alone other head coaches of teams that have not achieved results. Just as Mike Malone expressed his opinion on this, why would anyone be shocked by this? This is just a very normal thing. As the head coach of an NBA team, being fired because of the team's loss is also the fate of most coaches. And Mike Brown just happened to be in such a situation. He has nearly 30 years of coaching experience, has won 4 NBA championships as an assistant coach, and has been named Coach of the Year twice. In terms of coaching ability and tactical level, he is definitely one of the top 5 coaches in the league today. But even so, these are not enough to change the decision of someone who wants to fire him. Unless Mike Brown can also do the same as Greg Popovich, he has absolute voice and leadership in the team.